Hey pals, welcome back to the channel. This is Pal. Today we are doing a guide for rune farming and ways in which you can beef your character up for the challenge that is the Lands Between. I have three main ways in which you can earn runes, both in the early game and in the mid to late game. Now, there are plenty of other ways and places to farm, but I'm not great at those, and maybe I'm just not familiar, but I will mention the ones that I know of, and so I might not have a clear-cut way of accomplishing that, so feel free to do some extra research if you need to find those. Now before we start, I want you to head to your multiplayer menu and add these group passwords. What this does is any time that someone in one of those groups becomes Elden Lord or defeats a Shard Bearer, you will gain a temporary boost in the runes you earn. And a message will pop up when this is active. If you are up for it, you can also beat the boss in the abandoned cave here, which will net you the golden scarab talisman, which boosts rune drops if worn. Early game rune farming can be relatively easy to reach. In Limgrave, if we start at the Third Church of Marika, we can head to this cove to the north. Here you will find Ascending Gate. Go ahead and take that teleport. This will teleport you to Dragon's Barrow, north of Caelid. Once you load in, make sure you grab the Grace and Geraint's Chamber just in case you draw the ire of the late game field bosses outside. If you follow my pathing to the southeast, you will come across a bridge that if at night there will be a boss here, and honestly it seems like every time I come here it's night, so I have to run past him if I'm starting a new game anyway, so just be aware of that. Nonetheless, behind the tower here is a Spirit Spring jump. Go ahead and take that. Now a side note real quick, there's a farming spot on this side of the bridge with a spawning ball, but I find it to be a little less consistent than just fighting the dragon we're about to talk about. It seems like sometimes you have to watch the ball fall off the cliff, and then if you get hit by the ball, especially in the early game, it does such a crazy amount of damage that it's almost not worth doing. There's also a side of grace at this tower, so if you're not being chased by the Knight's Cavalry on the bridge, you can go ahead and grab this just for safety, but that's about all I have to add for a side note there. At the top, there's these little graveyard things, and these tend to have a lot of soul items, so it's wise to grab these items as you pass through. Then you're going to ride towards the minor Erd tree, avoiding the Erd tree avatar here. And behind this tree is another Spirit Spring jump. Again, you're going to want to take this. And as you reach the top, you should be able to spot Fort Ferrith, where you will find a site of grace and a giant dragon. With a bleed weapon, if you value your time, you can approach the rear leg of the dragon. This will aggro it to a certain extent, but nothing of dire consequence will happen. Proceed with attacking its leg until it dies. This boss alone drops close to 70,000 runes. This is due to the fact that the intended way to fight this boss is by killing the lesser dragons surrounding it, and since they are part of the encounter, they will die as well, netting you quite a bit of runes. You can easily reach upwards of like level 30 or so, and can be done as soon as you start the game, so this is a really good place to head to right off the bat if you want to just beef your character up before tackling like Stormveil or going to do this next rune farm, which is also in Dragon's Barrow. So again, if you feel comfortable enough or wish to return after fighting the giant dragon, you can go back to Geraint's Chamber and proceed to farm the vulgar militiamen outside. I think there's about 7 to 10 of these enemies outside, and each of them drop about 1,000 runes or 1,300 runes with a password or talisman. Now, there are a couple of graces near here, and you can simply fight them on horseback, so you can probably net around 10,000 runes per trip. You don't really have to worry about losing runes. If you die, you can just ride up, grab them, and then continue with your rune farm. These farming spots work well in the early to mid game to either earn some quick levels or help you reach the amount you need for your next levels. So it's just a decent spot. They're late game enemies technically, you'll see these guys everywhere, but honestly, if you just fight them on horseback, you'll earn quite a bit because of the area they're in. They're going to drop a high amount of runes, more than you would get if you progress through the game in a natural manner. Our mid to late game farming spot requires a little bit of a setup. So essentially we need to do Vare's quest, which requires us to speak to him at the first step side of Grace. Once we defeat Godric or another Shard Bearer and are allowed audience with the 2 fingers, we can then find Vare at the Rose Church in Liurnia. He will give you invasion items, and from there you have 2 options. 1, you can invade 3 other players. Win or lose, you only need to do this 3 times, and then you can return to Vare. Or 2, you can head to Wraithblood Ruins in Altus, where you can do an NPC invasion, which also counts. So this is like your offline option. So to get here without going through the ruin-strewn precipice, you will need both halves of the Dectus Medallion. One can be found in Fort Height and Limgrave, and the other in Fort Ferrith and Dragonsbarrow. That last one should sound familiar, right? From the Road of Iniquity side path, Grace, follow the path to the west and you will eventually come across the ruins. The first ruin of this area will have the summoning sign for the invasion. Once this is complete, you can return to Vare at the Rose Church, which he will commend you for spilling tarnished blood and ask you to soak a cloth in the blood of a maiden. Again, we have a few options with how we can go about accomplishing this. First, you can kill Arena in the Weeping Peninsula if you haven't already done Morn's Castle. Likely this is probably the easiest one to do if you haven't touched on Weeping Peninsula yet. If you have done that and don't care for Hietta's quest and the Frenzied Flame rewards, you can kill Hietta at the lake-facing cliffs in Liurnia. This is also a maiden that counts for soaking the cloth. If you do want to do Hietta's quest, you're going to have to head to the Frenzied Flame village anyway, and here you will find the Church of Inhibition, and you can soak the cloth in a body here. This is probably the most difficult one, since there is the threat of madness unless you deal with the enemies at the tower, and you will be invaded by Vike at the church, and that can be a difficult encounter for any new players, so keep that in mind. There are some cool rewards for going there, but that's just the way it is. Finally, you can head to the 4 Belfries and take the locked TP to the Church of Anticipation. I think the message by the teleporter will say Precipice of Anticipation, and if you don't have an imbued Stone Sword key, the top altar at the 4 Belfries has a chest with that in it, so you don't really have to worry about having the right item to do this one. So this will take you to the start of the game where you fought the Grafted Scion. You will have to fight him again, but this time around it'll be much easier. You'll have your Estus flasks, maybe a couple of levels in you, that sort of stuff. It should be a cakewalk, right? And in this church where you start the game, there is a dead maiden on the floor in which you can soak the cloth. You return to Vare one final time and exhaust his dialogue. Again, I have to reiterate, exhaust his dialogue. Keep talking to him until he starts repeating things, and you'll get all the things you need out of him. He will give you 2 important items here, the Bloody Finger for Infinite Invasion, so if you're looking to do an invasion PvP, this is an item you're going to want anyway, and you will also get the Pureblood Knight's Medal, which you can use to take you to Mohg's area. So if you follow my pathing to the overlook with the Albinaurics in Mohg's area, you will find this area with a bunch of Albinaurics, and if you don't mind spilling their silver blood, the passive enemies here will drop around 2,500 runes, and the red ones will drop about 2,000 runes. And again, this differs if you have if you have your passwords active, or if you have like the Golden Scarab Talisman, or like the Crow's Foot, the Golden Chicken Foot, whatever. Also, at this spot, if you have the means, you can shoot the bird below, and they will unalive themselves for a fat 11,000 runes. So you can rinse and repeat to your heart's content, really buff your character up for endgame content, or if you're just trying to hit like meta levels for PvP, this is a good spot to do so. Now there is another way to farm enemies in this area, but it requires you to climb this wall here and jumping off the edge near the tree and continuing to swing your weapon on your horse until you no longer earn any runes. You earn a lot more runes than just killing the Albinaurics here, but I found it way too difficult for me to get up there, so if you can manage it, this is a much more efficient than simply slaughtering the Albinaurics, and I would recommend this is the way you do it. There's plenty of information about how you can do this everywhere on YouTube and just on the internet in general, right? There are plenty of other ways to earn runes in this game, but these seem to be the best. And if you have a favorite farming spot, let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, keep an eye out for build guides in the future, so if you want to see that kind of stuff, make sure you subscribe. I know I'm kind of doubling down on the subscriptions, but hey man, what can a guy do? Anyway, that's all I have for today. This has been Alpal. Be kind, be safe, spread the love, and we'll see you next time. Peace.